All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about something that's very, very important for drawing. We're drawing 3D shapes, well, really any shape. You really need to know this, and there's not enough talked about this. I'll guarantee you this concept will just save you so much angst in drawing. So we're going to talk about how to draw ellipses. And we're going to talk about ellipses, and we're going to talk about ovals, and we're going to talk about how they relate to circles. So we're going to talk about ellipses versus ovals versus circles. And we want to understand especially the difference between ellipses and ovals because they are not the same thing. And so many people use them interchangeably that it can be very, very confusing, but they are not the same. All right, so I want you to go ahead and watch. I've got a few videos on dealing with ellipses because ellipses are one of the most misunderstood and most fundamentally important concepts to understand how to deal with as an artist. And so we're going to talk about the major minor axis, we're going to talk about horizontal axes and vertical axes for the circle, and how to help us draw better circles and how to draw better ellipses. And I even have a little special video that will teach you how to draw a perfect ellipse every time when it really matters. And so that's a really, that's a really great video. If you're doing, I used to do commercial work, and there's times you had to nail it. You had to make it look just, even though you had to draw by hand, it had to look like it was done almost by a template. And there are ways of doing it. We're going to tell you the secrets. All right. So go ahead and watch the videos on ellipses and circles and ovals. Then try to actually sit down. And I want you to do some ellipses. I want you to do some formal ellipses. I want you to do some sketched ellipses. We want you to get used to the concept of dealing with ellipses. All right, so watch those different videos and try to emulate and understand what's being said in each one of those videos. If you have to watch them more than once, don't worry about it. I have had people in my classes that have had to retake the same class 2 or 3 times. And it's funny because sometimes we think, oh, we have to retake something that somehow that we've dropped the ball, and it's not that at all. You need to understand the concepts to advance. And I've had certain students that have come into my beginning drawing class and taken it 2 or 3 times and then gone on to drawing 2. And then I've had other students that went directly into drawing 2. And these students that retook the first drawing class 2 or 3 times, and most of these people had never taken drawing before. They were intimidating the artists and the students that were in the drawing 2 class because they really got it. They really understood it. It really sunk in. And so again, these concepts really, really help. They will just amazingly affect your drawing. So go ahead and watch the videos about ellipses. Stop it if you have to. Rewatch it. Get it into the gray matter. Get it in there because it will help you as an artist in so many ways. So you guys, again, hang in there, keep at it. I applaud you for your desire to, again, improve your work, and, just keep at it. Just hang in there. You will improve. I guarantee you. Stay tuned. And so today we're going to be talking a little bit about circles and ellipses and ovals, what they are, and how we can draw them better. If we have a circle, though, that's been drawn, we just traced one out real quick, so that's why this is so clean. But we have this nice circle here, and if we take any circle and if we cut it in half horizontally, and if we cut it in half vertically, so we've split this in half this way, we've split this in half this way, that's going to give us a central point right here. That's the exact center of this ellipse. And what this helps us to do, and we can do this when we draw, is that if we took, this measurement right here, and so, I don't know, let's say we had something to measure it with. We'll just use this stray piece of paper. If we took this, and this is a true circle, this should touch that circle all the way around. Okay, so, and that's what when you have a compass, for those who know what a compass is, it has a pointed end and it has a, it's basically looks like this, except it's got a hinge and it looks a little nicer. But you would go ahead and take that and put this down and trace the circle because it's equidistant around that point. Now sometimes people are like, well, why wouldn't I just go ahead and grab one to make a perfect circle? Well, you could, except you don't want to poke holes in the paper. But there are certain things you can use that actually will circumscribe perfect circles in case you're doing some sort of drafting assignment or something, or doing something by hand where you need a perfect circle. But let's say we drew one by hand. Now whenever we draw a circle, we use our whole arm. So you see this pencil moving. I'm swinging it through my elbow, through my shoulder. My wrist is not moving. My fingers are not moving. So you use your whole arm whenever you draw a circle. And if you're worried about a circle, you can, so I'm dragging my pinky on the paper, but you can sort of hover over it, sort of like warming up for batting practice. You know, when you swing through and think about the ball as you're swinging your bat. Well, where you can go ahead and try to feel, does that feel like that's a good circle? And what it is, we can go ahead and put our pencil down. Kind of skipped around that time. Must be a little nervous because of the camera. A little camera shy. But let's say this was my circle. Now, this is not a perfect circle, and you guys probably can't see this, so we're going to do it darker. So let's say that I had drawn a circle. Get about like this. A little clunky. And let's say I wanted it to be better. And so what we could do, if this is our circle, is that I could go ahead and we could split it halfway that way. Seems that's a little low, so we're going to lift the line. Don't want that getting too big. So this would be our horizontal axis. Split it, cut it in half horizontally. Whoops, that's supposed to be an N, not a T yet. Okay, so horizontal. That's one tall N. And then we can split it in half this way. I can use my thumb and the pencil, the edge of the pencil, to make it a measuring device to see if I got it in the middle. It was pretty close, but not quite. So then I can go ahead and split this. And I need this to be 90 degrees, or pretty close to it. So one of your exercises when you're drawing lines is try to split lines, you know, 90 degrees. A nice good corner. So if I'm taking a line, I'm not splitting it, whoops, let's go ahead and make that darker. I'm not splitting it like that, I'm not splitting it like that. You're going to practice so you can try to split it so it's about the same on all four corners. It's a really good exercise. So right now, by doing this, I've got my point. It's the center point. And even if it's not exact center, it's the center now. I locked it in. And this is the outside. If I was, doing something that was like a drafting assignment and had to look like it was, just a lot better circle than this, I could go ahead, mark that point off, and I could take this, and I could go ahead and go around my circle and make sure, again, I wouldn't bet, it's not bad, it's not great, not bad, but I give myself points, little points along this curve where I know it's equal to, that's equidistant, and I could use that to draw a better circle. Again, it's not super bad. There's a couple places where it just gets a little flat. Again, put that on the middle, mark where it is down here. But so you can just give yourself extra little points. Again, to draw. This has been the worst off right down here through here has been the worst. The most offensive, and this right here, it just gets worse through this curve. That's probably, we're close to almost 3/16 of an inch, and that's okay. That's why we're doing this. So if we said, all right, this is now my points, again, we could go ahead and trim this up. And we could make a much better circle. using these points. Come around through here. You know, and this is charcoal, so we'd have to clean this up a little bit. But you could go ahead and go, all right, well, I've cleaned that circle up. And this looks flat through there. How did that happen? Must have fallen asleep at the wheel. Again, it's not off as bad as I thought. Oh, that's okay, so that makes sense. I was wondering how this got... Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so... Wow. So sometimes when we're on camera and things like that, I had this lined up so I couldn't see it as well as I can now because it was like this. So it was behind the mark, so I couldn't see as well. That one's right on, and so that's part of what's happening here. Usually, and again, the only reason I wanted to do this because I was like, man, this circle's still wonky. What happened to the circle? And I want you to know that if you use it right, it will work. If you don't, like right here, I double checked my work. And now I've got a circle that's come back in, and now it feels circular. Now, the camera, sometimes if it's not exactly, well, not sometimes, if it's not exactly aligned correctly, this might seem like it has a little distortion to it, but it's pretty close to just a true circle, without using a template or something. And so there we go. Got our circle. This one's I got just a little flat through there, so we're gonna go ahead and there we go. But anyway, it's pretty close to a true circle all the way around now. And so we can use that technique to bring our circles, if we're having a struggle with a circle that we really need to, we're doing this, nice finished drawing. And again, we want to seem like, not seem, but we want this to have a very, very accurate circle. Usually I wouldn't do it with charcoal because charcoal doesn't erase all the way. But for the camera, you can see charcoal much more easily than you can graphite. Graphite disappears. Even when I was drawing this charcoal very lightly, the major minor axis, hopefully you guys it wasn't too light. But so we can use that to, again, bring our circle so that it is, a more accurate circle. And if it's an accurate circle, it should be, again, the same distance all the way around, especially at, these 4 points especially. That's should be, right dead on. And, looks like we pushed out a little bit, but it's almost, it's within like a 32nd of an inch, so we're really close. Whereas down here we're out by almost 3/16 of an inch, which is almost 1/4 of an inch. That's not close. And so again, this will help you with better circles. But one thing, let's talk about circles themselves. So if I have a circle is always symmetrical, and symmetrical means the circle is the same, or that it's mirrored. They're the exact same. So if I've got my circle here, and we've split this up with a horizontal axis and a vertical axis, this side right here should be the mirror image of that side. And And I could be able to fold this over along this line, and this line here should fall and trace right over that one because it's mirrored. You could fold it together like a billfold, and again the edges would be all lined up or something like that. It's also symmetrical top to bottom. This is what a circle is. So a circle is symmetrical right to left and top to bottom. So this top right here, or the bottom, should be, these two pieces should be the exact same. So if I folded this down along this crease, or if that became a crease and I folded it down, this line would trace on top of that line. Okay, it should be symmetrical. Not only that, but if it's a true circle, it also happens quadrant to quadrant. So if I went ahead, and this is a true circle, this quadrant here and this quadrant here, let's see, these should be the exact same. I should be able to fold this up along, this dot, sort of along a line that would be diagonally perpendicular to that line, but whatever. I should be able to fold this up and straight down onto there, and this outside edge right here would trace this outside edge. So it's the same top to bottom, like so. It's also the same right to left, or in other words, symmetrical is what we call that when it's mirror images. And it's the same diagonally, quadrant to quadrant, this way. So those two should be the same, and these two should be the exact same. All those have to be met, all those conditions have to be met in order for this to be a true circle. Okay, and this one's pretty close. Again, it's not as exact as that one. That was traced with something that was completely, a complete circle, so it's a much better circle. But this isn't bad either. And again, we could go ahead and check, quadrant to quadrant, right to left, top to bottom, and we'd have, a really good circle there. So again, it should be the same right to left. These pieces too should be the same. Folded over, this should fold down right on top of there. It should be the same top to bottom. So if we folded it down this way, folded it over, this line would trace that line, and it should be the same through your quadrants diagonally. So if I folded this, that should fold down exactly on top of there and exactly on top of there. So with a circle, we can use a vertical axis and a horizontal axis, and remember these axes they have to be at 90 degrees. Okay, there we go, it's closer. But they're supposed to be at a true 90. That's not perfect, but we'll use our imagination, shall we? So this is supposed to, this little symbol here, we'll use this little symbol, and this symbol means that, oh, it's a true corner. Or in other words, it's 90 degrees. Okay, so we need these two to be, 90 degrees. This is pretty close to 90 degrees. It might be 89.75, but it's pretty close. Well, it drifts a little bit down to the bottom there, right through there. So, anyways, but that's what we need for a true circle. Now, the reason we talk about a true circle, first off, it's to help us in case we need to draw a circle, right? So if we need to draw a circle, yeah, let's talk about the circle. But we also, so we can make sure that we can see this, that we've got, this is a circle. And so we need this to feel like a circle. So it's the same, or it's symmetrical, meaning the same, or mirrored, right to left, top to bottom, diagonal to diagonal. That's very important when it comes to the next part, which is ovals and ellipses. Now I put circles versus ovals and ellipses. That's probably not exactly right. So we're going to cross that out, shall we? But we want to talk about what the difference is between an ellipse and an oval. Now sometimes people will use these two words interchangeably. like they're the exact same word. And the thing is, they are not the exact same word. They are very, very, very different. So sometimes you'll see a shape like this, and people will go, oh, that's an oval. No, it's not. So we just want to make sure that we know what we're talking about. And I'll sometimes not confuse them, but sometimes I'll use the incorrect word. But I just want you to know what the two mean. So the oval literally means egg shape, or egg-like. But anyways, so an oval is actually an egg shape. And sometimes people might say, well, isn't that the same as an ellipse? No, it's not. An ellipse is actually a circle in perspective. Okay? So this is a circle. And perspective just means, well, let me go ahead and write this. I'm sure you guys are on the edge of your seat, just wondering what we're going to be talking about here in a moment. But if I had, like, if I was drawing a cup. Now, if I'm looking straight down on the cup, like the camera is, I can see this as a full circle. But the moment the cup begins to turn away from the camera, it's going to go into perspective. It becomes an ellipse. It's still a circle. It's just that circle is going to change as it tips further and further and further away from my eye. Okay? So that is a circle going into perspective. And it would go into perspective if I tipped it this way. It would go into perspective if I tipped it that way. You know, it's still a circle, but it's in perspective. So when we draw, we're constantly dealing with perspective, especially and with circles and boxes and everything else. So an ellipse is a circle in perspective, and an oval is actually an egg shape. So an egg, we can start with a little circle like this. So for an egg shape is really just sort of a circle with a round. And when they say egg shape, you know, they really mean a chicken's egg, a goose egg, or a duck egg. So we're not talking about eggs by, you know, birds that live on cliff sides that are irregular eggs, shaped eggs so they'll stay on the cliffside. No, we're talking about a chicken's egg, a duck egg, or a goose egg. And so this right here, you know, again, if this is our egg shape right through here, the egg has a rounded end, like so, and the egg has what they call a beak end. It's not a point. It's a rounded point, but it's a blunted point, or it's not a sharp point. So this right here is the beak end, right there. And if we cut this in half, this is not mirrored. It's not symmetrical right to left. Now, it would be symmetrical if we cut it this way, but remember, it's also not symmetrical this way. So it's not a circle. Circles are symmetrical top to bottom, right to left, and quadrant to quadrant. So this is our egg, and there are certainly times we use an egg shape, and when we're going to use an egg shape, we say oval. Okay? So, or you could say oval to indicate the egg. And this is just one of these things, perhaps it's my pet peeve, but it's something that happens a lot in the art world, is you get comfortable with certain vocabulary, and I just want to make sure that we learn the right stuff in the beginning. So when we say oval, we're talking about an egg shape. However, this right here is an ellipse. Okay? And if it's a well-drawn ellipse, this isn't bad. Better than the circle, but it's not bad. But if it's an ellipse, what we can do is we can take this ellipse, we can take this at its widest point, and we can go ahead and slice this in half. Okay? Okay, so if I slice this in half, and if it is in the middle, and if it's at the right place, this top piece right now, I've kind of got this in perspective because it's away from me, so I'm trying to look in the camera to see if it actually is symmetrical, because I'm looking at it, it's in perspective, and so this seems like it's more space than that. And this is just so you can see it as I record it. But so yeah, this is close, but it's not exactly in the middle. But still, if I cut this from the middle, this top piece will be mirrored, the mirror image of this. If I took this along this line and folded it down, this line up here would fold down perfectly onto this line down here. Okay, and because it should be mirrored or symmetrical. If I then took this and cut this in half, and I'm going to take my thumb and the end of the pencil and just measure it very quickly to see how close I got. And I was off by a country mile, it looks like. Hold on a second. This is right there. Measure that to there. That's how much I overshot. Bring it back so it lines up. Made a mark to where I overshot was. Take these two and split these in half, and that's the exact middle. So won't get into that right now so much, but you can figure out very quickly how much you overshot by, I took this and I said, okay, well, let's go from there forward, and it overshoots this by 5/16, and then I brought this back so it lined up with there, made a mark. This was the 5/16, and then I split it in half, and that's the exact middle now. So if I've done this correctly, and this should be 90 degrees, it's close. It's not perfect. It looks like to me like it's almost a degree off, but it's pretty close. So if this is 90 degrees, like this, well, then we're going to have, again, this is mirrored. The top and bottom will be mirrored, right? Now it's an ellipse, so it is longer than it is tall. However, it is still the same top to bottom. And then if we look right to left, if we've done this, if it's truly an ellipse, again, this isn't a perfect ellipse, but it's pretty close. If it's, again, a decent ellipse, again, this is a pretty decent ellipse. This side will be mirror image of that side, which is pretty close to being, which it is, pretty close. And then remember we said, all right, well, this quadrant here should be the same as that quadrant there, or mirrored. And then this quadrant here should be the same as that quadrant there, or mirrored. And if that is mirrored and this is mirrored and top to bottom, right to left, and quadrant to quadrant, then what I'm looking at is a circle in perspective, and that circle is called an ellipse. So this here is our ellipse. Okay? These pencils squeak a little bit when you use them. So you've got our ellipse. So that's now a circle in perspective. And so now, by understanding, okay, we've got to have it symmetrical, and the way we can check its symmetry is just like we used a horizontal axis and a vertical axis, in other words, a horizontal line and a vertical line, but that this passes through the middle horizontally, passes through the middle vertically, and we get a central point. Same thing happens here. This passes through, and this is so dark we probably can't see it, but I get a central point where those two pass through the middle. And then we've got this point here, and that point there, and this point here is where it touches the ellipse, and that point there is where it touches the ellipse, and this distance should be the same as that distance from the middle, and this distance here should be the same as that distance there from the middle. So that, again, so right to left it's the same, top to bottom it's the same, and again, of course, we can check the quadrant from here to here and see how this line looks against that line to see if the lines are the same or not. So you can say, hey, is this curve and arc the same as that curve and arc? Okay, all right, and it should be. And we can say, well, this one's just slightly different. This one, maybe it rounds a little bit more through the end, and this one's a little pointy. Well, then you come in through here and you'd go ahead and try to make this side match that side. Is how we do that, okay? So we've got an ellipse. Once we have the ellipse, all of a sudden, so with the vertical axis and the horizontal axis, they were the same length for a circle, because this circle is not in perspective. So these are the same length, so they don't have special names. Well, other than this is horizontal, that's vertical. But once you have an ellipse, you have a longer line versus a shorter line. And now these have very special names. And it's important. People might be like, yeah, whatever. But it really is important. It helps us to do all kinds of things that we would otherwise mess up or not do so well. And we don't want that. We want to be like, yeah, okay, I got it. And that's not something we have to like lose sleep over. It's just something you learn, you remember it, get into your brain, and then you don't have to worry about it. But once we have these two lines, all of a sudden the long one we now call the major axis. Okay. And then, sorry about the squeak, these things squeak. This is then the minor axis. Okay, so the short one is called the minor, and the long one is called the major. So the short line is the minor axis, the long line is the major axis. Okay, we're going to talk more about the major minor axis for drawing ellipses. We first want to just make you understand with a circle, we can use a vertical and horizontal axis to mark the middle, and then we can make sure that it's the same distance all the way around. Now this was traced, so it wasn't that big a deal. This one was done by hand, and again, I got the vertical, got the horizontal, marked that point, and then made sure that point was the same at about 12 points around here or something like that, and then used that to form this into a much better circle. And then we said, all right, well, we want to understand that an oval is an egg shape, which is not symmetrical right to left. It is top to bottom, top to bottom, but it is not quadrant to quadrant. But that the ellipse is symmetrical top to bottom, right to left, quadrant to quadrant, because it is a circle. It has all the characteristics of a circle. All right, so we'll come back and talk more about this.